Hey there crafters! So after 400 hours on a single account, not to mention another 400 hours on my alt account that I would run together with my main to craft additional professions to help feed my main character, and after getting our small settlement to tier 3, I feel like I can give an honest take on Bitcraft and that I truly did give it my all, so I can provide a review that can help educate future players on whether this is the game for them or not. So for those who do not know what the game is, it is an online multiplayer game that is spread across a very large procedurally generated map with different biomes. You are a crafter who must craft their way to higher tiered items. It has an MMO feel to it that there are a lot of other players in the world you can interact with by either joining their empire or settlement, or just through trading items that you can craft, or by buying their items. There are mounts that you can earn and ride for faster travel, including boats and various animals. There are NPCs who want resources and crafted items and who will give you money for turn-ins, which you can then use to purchase items from them or other players. There is a tiered base building, but we'll talk about that later. Which brings me to the next thing this game is, which to me it is also a type of city builder, except that you're not looking down from above like some commanding god or boss, but you're the one doing the work, which is a very big distinction here. Your goal is to be a part of or to create a settlement or be in an empire which consists of many settlements together, pulling their power and resources together to be the biggest economical powerhouse on the map. Now the game is mostly PvE for the most part, with the PvE being limited to just land grabbing from your enemies via taking their boundary towers that mark their territory, but it's not PvP in the traditional sense, and no matter what happens to these boundaries, if you have a settlement within that boundary, your settlement would not be affected, at least not in the game's current iteration. So for now, it's mostly just about bragging rights. So let's get to what I found good about the game. So the things that I really like about Bitcraft is the in-depth crafting. If crafting in MMOs is your jam, then this game might be for you, but this comes with a caveat that I'm going to get to later. More good things about the game are things I was not expecting to be in the game as an alpha, such as a decent cosmetic system where you earn profession-specific outfits or can purchase more fun outfits through an NPC or through crafting. The inventory system is good for an early access game and allows sorting, searching, and naming containers, etc. The various biomes are beautiful and very distinguishable from one another, and they offer plenty of decent resources that are varied. The game also has a nice resource tracking feature once you have discovered an item, which works very well and is needed since the world is so big. The game performs very well also with very little lag or issues from having so many players in the world at once, which by the way is one single server shard system, so you are all playing together. The game can also become a little addictive, with many times having me say just one more crafting job before finally signing out. The system requirements seem rather low for good play as well, so I can see this being something that comes to consoles or handhelds in the future, and I actually had a few friends play this while they were on the road traveling on an older laptop. The devs' response times to issues and overall communication has been decent for the most part, and so far there have been weekly updates and server fixes to help stabilize and maintain things well. So ultimately, most reviewers will probably talk about the grind, and it is a very big deal, but let me first go over some other issues that I've found. To begin with, there is no friends list or many great social features to help keep your empire or settlement organized. Having things like internal crafting boards to list or to have needed items would greatly help this game. The resource costs are also severely needing attention, with many items not making sense, such as structures that appear to be mostly made of stone requiring mostly wood. Wood is needed for everything, so your poor lumberjack will be out for literal real-world days just cutting wood and making timber beams. The emphasis on needing so many other crafting professions, while nice and novel, can also become a burden for solo or even small groups of players. Now, it's my experience that the majority of gamers prefer either solo or 2 to 4 player teams. Even with 2 to 4 players, it is very hard to upgrade and maintain a settlement, much less cover every profession adequately. Also, things not so great is the hunting and slaying system. system. Combat in general is very boring and the fights last too long, so expect no captivating fights here, not to mention your upgrades do not feel worthwhile when you struggle to take on level 1 jackals even with tier 3 gear. The upgrade process is not only overpriced, but also underwhelming, so all of that work feels like it was not worthwhile. Speaking of the pricing of items, the NPCs pay out very little money, which would be fine, but the items they sell are vastly overpriced, and the items they ask for are also a bit much when you are already constantly needing the same resources to upgrade your own base. So if you're in the middle of a big upgrade, it's kind of hard to afford to either do the dailies or to afford to buy anything they sell. Then once you hit tier 3 crafting, you also have to purchase items from the NPC just to be able to craft your normal items, which I'm totally against because this is clearly a money sink. But the problem is that those mounts or better carts or wagons that you want, they cost so much that you can't afford those items, not without either putting off the upgrades that you need to craft for your settlement or just an increase in time to stop and craft what they need, which again is not for much money for the turn-ins. I rarely found myself having more than 2,000 to 3,000 gold, especially once I hit tier 3 and was buying sandpaper and whatever else I needed just to be able to craft ingots, bricks, or planks. This leads me to the grind. The grind is next level here, but it doesn't have to be. So many items are needlessly expensive, and as you tier up your settlement, which in and of itself is the largest pain that you can imagine with grinding multi-profession resources, but as you tier up your settlement, you would think that those new workstations might make lower tiered items easier to craft or faster, but they don't. At least not in a real sensible way, and yes, you will still very much need those lower tiered items since your new tiers require the earlier tiers as well, at sometimes double the amount than the current tier, which to me makes no sense at all. How would a tier 3 item need more tier 2 resources than a tier 3? Anyway, back to crafting at stations. You are limited to passively crafting only 10 items at a time for your current tier. So why not, if you have a tier 2 station, can you not craft 20 tier 1 items at twice the speed? Or a tier 3 station craft 30 items at 3 times the speed for tier 1 items, etc. The upgraded stations appear to just allow you to craft the newest tier and at an increased time for the new tier, so you will find yourself ever at a workstation and not out actually exploring the world unless you're looking for that next resource, which will most likely be pretty far away. So not only will you spend more time at a station crafting those latest resources, but the travel time is also something you will have to contend with for moving your resources back and forth. And you know, for larger empires who have 10 to 20 workers working together, that's pretty achievable. But again, that's not what normally populates games, especially MMOs. And upgrades take so long to do, which I kind of understand, but again, they're not worthwhile, especially upgrading your settlement from one tier to the next, which will in turn allow you to craft those tier 3 stations. These upgrades should feel like a true accomplishment after you complete them, and not demoralize you to where you're ready to log out and possibly not return, because to think about what would be needed to not only add those new upgraded stations to your newly upgraded settlement, but to also be thinking ahead about upgrading your overall settlement to tier 4 just makes you want to quit. And that's the ultimate crutch of this game. Your smaller groups who would be populating your sparse out of reach areas as small outpost players run across are not going to stick around long and work on these settlements because it just gets boring. This leads me to some changes that I'd like to see. So to me, the emphasis should be on smaller settlements and a cost change to not only start and upgrade those settlements, but to maintain them as well. I firmly believe that smaller solo groups of 2 to 3 players should not be able to do what an empire does, but they don't have to. Settlements should not be having the same cost as an empire capital settlement to upgrade their settlement. In fact, I would argue that there could be smaller type of settlements to specialize in like 2 or 3 things instead of needing to upgrade everything in a settlement. So for instance, a small fishing village on the water could also do farming and maybe tailoring. So it's just that type of settlement and would not need to know metalsmithing, woodworking, etc. to upgrade, and could just focus on those things and trade what they make. Maybe there's a mid-tier settlement which can specialize in all trades, but ultimately the smaller settlements could be more sporadic and help feed those larger settlements or empires easier since they can upgrade faster and stay ahead of the curve. Now, more things I'd like to see happen are a reduction in slayer animals overall. They overspawn in some areas pretty drastically, and since combat combat is so terribly boring and generic with our weapon types and stats not really doing much, it would be nice to not have as many slayable resources as I get from hunted animals when I go out on a hunting run. That, or make it so a solo player can take on 2 to 3 lower tiered animals without dying over and over again, and that debuff stacking as high as it does. Now there's plenty of smaller things that I'd like to see changes to, but that's kind of more nitpicking. The change in grind times and resource costs, especially needing $10 for a settlement upgrade, etc., and a focus on smaller player groups are my main concerns here. Alright, so that's pretty much the review. Ultimately, the game needs less time at stations and more time out and about trading and gathering, exploring, and meeting other players. You get too bogged down with crafting at a station, which I don't even want to imagine how many hours something takes for tier 10 items. Perhaps NPC crafting is the way to go here, like Pal World, or more passive crafting stations where it makes sense. I think this game could have a bright future. It's just unfortunate that it caters strictly to larger empires and not the individual, because it's always been your solo small groups that keep a game alive. And in a game like this, those smaller groups could really feed those large empires to make this play really well and be more fun. Anyway, I've been Black, and while I do not plan to continue playing Bitcraft for now, I will be checking on it from time to time, and I hope it does get better. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.